The traveling extravaganza, known as the Witchlight Carnival, visits your world once every 8 years. You have a dim memory of sneaking into the carnival as a child without paying a ticket. The memory has grown foggy over time, though it still conjures a weird admixture of emotions, wonder and awe mixed with loss and regret. During this childhood visit, your character lost something. You tried to find it, but the carnival owners, a pair of elves named Mr. Witch and Mr. Light, were decidedly unhelpful. "Silly little screaming cricket," says Witch. "You forgot to buy a ticket." "The carnival goes round and round," says Mr. Light. "The universe is our playground. Nothing's free and nothing's lost. Every visit has a cost." As time passed, your heart became less heavy and you gave less and less thought to those childhood events. Now, for reasons you can't explain, the longing to retrieve what was lost has resurfaced, as though an old spell has faded away, allowing you to feel the loss as sharply as it happened yesterday. The Witchlight Carnival has returned, and you find yourself standing near a ticket booth by the entrance, at twilight, just as the carnival is about to open. There you meet others who look just as troubled as you. Without knowing how or why, you sense that each of them has lost something as well. Perhaps fate has brought you together. So today's video is on the Well Beyond the Witchlight. I'm going to be interviewing my DM who ran me through this, but I just want to do a quick bit of housekeeping. So Patrick is not right here. He is absent because he was unexpectedly pulled into the magical realm of Prismere, the enchanted domain featured in the Well Beyond the Witchlight. While he was exploring the Witchlight Carnival, he accidentally wandered through a hidden portal into the Feywild. There, he met with a whimsical denizen of the realm and invited him to a delightful yet disorientating tea party that twisted his sense of time. That is taking up a lot of his time, so in the meantime, it's just going to be me and my DM. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Nathan. I play pretty much every week for the past, I want to say 4 years now.
Yeah, 4 years.
With Carmel. And yeah, about a year ago, we ran the Wild Beyond the Witchlights when it came out. I think it was the first campaign I ran from Wizards. And it's definitely the first one I ran online. Yeah, I think it was quite interesting. It's a very unusual campaign, I think.
Yeah, I would say so. It was my first time playing a D&D module written by Wizards online, and it was my first D&D module written by Wizards that I played through the entire thing. As you may get the impression of, I mostly run D&D, so I don't get to play that often. So it just happens to be the way it is. I've played through, my first campaign was the Lost Mines of Phandelver, and then I played through a homebrew campaign in the first year of university, and I've been pretty much running D&D since then for the past like 7 or so years. But yeah, I did enjoy it. We're going to be sort of delving deep into Well Beyond the Witchlight, maybe why you should run it, what sort of happens. There will be spoilers throughout, so if you're planning on playing this, maybe send this video to your DM and just sort of leave it here. Appreciate the view, but I don't want to ruin your expectations or your I don't want to ruin your experience. The campaign is set in the Feywild. This is my first time playing or really even experiencing what a Feywild campaign is, and it inspired me to run a different Feywild campaign that you play through, the the Wrath of the River King by Kobold Press. What is your impression of the Feywild as a setting?
I think it's very conveniently open. A lot of things that if you want things to happen, you can just make them happen and explain it away. Basically, it's just Feywild weirdness. Timelines don't line up. Feywild weirdness. The party needs an encounter. They trip on a mushroom. The mushroom comes alive. There's because it's kind of got that Alice in Wonderland fairy tales side to it. It opens you to a lot of creativity, and I think that suits certain kind of players probably more than others.
Yeah, like
when I was
yes,
Sorry, go
I
ahead.
just want to sort of interject and say like it is very much its own style, and it has its own
Yeah,
sort of like aesthetic and its own sort of like like it's sort of its own. It sort of stands to me like in its own league compared to other adventure modules. I own or have played through most of the modules, I'm a bit of a hoarder when it comes to D&D content. I'm very enfranchised in this in the setting in the world of D&D. But the Feywild is this weird sort of like wondrous place where really anything can happen and anything is justified in happening. Like there are rules, but they're more as a guide rather than hard and fast laws. It's a place of like chaos and whimsy, and it's it's just sort of its own thing. Is sort of my impression of it.
Yeah, just like skimming over the book like, yeah, last night, I kind of had this thought that this is basically as close as you get to the opposite of a dungeon crawl in a campaign.
Yeah, pretty much. Which like for me is a bit of a strange one because like when it comes to D&D, my favorite thing is like monsters and combat.
Mm.
I love like monster lore. I love incorporating monsters and I like reading through. I own all of the monster books, even I own some like third party ones, just because I want to have a wide range as possible, just so I can confuse and delight players. And the whole like setup of being like this is a module that you can finish without rolling for initiative is just so bizarre to me.
Yeah, I was kind of worried about that when I first read the module. This whole you can run it, pacifist mode. Um, Mostly because, especially running online, um, it's nice to have a map with where people can move characters and such.
Mm.
And I thought, oh, that this is just not going to happen. Turns out you guys were just more than happy to fight your way through most of the problems, so it didn't really turn into an issue. But yeah, I like the idea that they've always built in some kind of escape. But yeah, I think it will suit some people, some players, much more than others.
Like I feel like I learned a lot about D&D by playing through this module. I felt like the design philosophy of this can be talked out or talked through is an important like facet of encounter design that I just like hadn't, because I'm like so old school in my brain.
Mm.
I like old D&D modules where it's just a hack and slash, just a dungeon crawl. It's very clear who the enemies are. It's undead. It's demons. It's very clearly these are the bad guys. Kill them. Whereas in the this particular module, it felt a lot more sort of open ended. In like there was just off the top of my head, one of the ones that I remember was Long Scarf, the Haringcon that we
Mhm.
encountered, and it was very clearly like there was a battle map and we were all like positioned around it, but we just sort of like grabbed onto his scarf and unwound it, and that sort of ended the. It was kind of like what's that biblical character who's like a pirate in his hair? Do you remember that?
Biblical character. So I can only think of One Punch Man who's bald.
Hold on, I can Google it. It's anyway.
But yeah, that was kind of
Yeah, go ahead.
had this thing where a lot of the combats there's a little trick that you can get to kind of solve it.
Hmm.
And I was worried 'cause a few times you guys really were like very effective at solving it. So yeah, with Long Scarf, you get this brigand who ambushes the party, and he's just boasting constantly. You can tell he's a narcissist. He's talking about his scarf. He's named after his scarf. And one member of the party, I think Powell, just nicked his scarf off him, and he just has a complete mental breakdown. Um, and actually, there was a very similar thing towards the end of the campaign, where you're trying to liberate the queen of this domain. And one of the big obstacles to doing that in her palace is she's got this is it Jaggerwoth?
Jabberwock.
Jabberwock, this big dragon-like creature. And there's like loads of really hard ways to deal with him, including fighting him. And one of the easy ways is just you release this massive owl that's locked up in one of the rooms. And just by luck, you guys managed to do that pretty much first thing you went in.
Yeah, yeah,
And like, it's like, should I let them do this? Should I add something? But I think it worked out okay.
yeah. So I looked it up. It's Samson. It's a legendary Israelite warrior and judge who's renowned for his prodigious strength that he derived from his uncut hair. That's a deep cut. I'm sorry about that one. I really shouldn't bring things up unless I'm sure about it. But yeah, the 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 long scarf, his entire thing just fell apart, and he had like a big breakdown, as you said, whenever you unraveled the scarf. Um, we're sort of like touching on a few different things at different stages of the module. Do you want to maybe like start at the beginning and work our way through?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So the beginning I thought was interesting.
yeah, it was definitely unique. It wasn't quite your let's start in a tavern and let's have
Mm.
some like beers, and then someone bursts in. They've kidnapped my daughter, and you'll rush to the safety. It was very unique and very like flavorful, and maybe you want to like talk about the actual Witchlight Carnival.
Yeah. So there's. I'm not sure if they have this in other campaigns. There's kind of this. They give you two hooks. So one of them is like the traditional one. There's this warlock. Um, his patron is the Archfey of Prismia.
Hmm.
He's not heard from her. He's upset. He gets some adventurers to go and find out what's going on. And the one that we went with is people. All the characters have been to the carnival in the past. As children, they snuck in. They didn't buy a ticket. And then there's this hidden price where they've lost something that's really important to them. So I think it was like I can't remember what you guys lost. I think it was sense of hearing and just that kind of stuff.
Yeah, or like sense of direction, or like like really really sort of abstract and metaphysical concepts. It was like it wasn't just oh I lost my shoe or I lost my. It was like personal things like that make you who you are.
Yeah, yeah. I think was it Keelan who had to knock on a door when we went through it, and that just ended up tripping you guys up a lot. Um, yeah.
Yeah.
The only thing that I thought was quite bad at that, because I think it's a great idea in terms of like getting the party something to look for in the Feywild and getting them motivated. The only downside is that a few of the characters could play as members of the staff of the circus,
Yeah.
um, which is kind of nice for the first chapter when you're there because you've got people who know people. And then once we got to the Feywild, it was just very unclear what their motivations were to actually go along with the rest of the campaign.
Yeah, my character
So
was
yeah, I think,
was also one of those. Was one of those like they called it was it the Witchlight Hands was the term.
yeah.
Yeah, so I was a Witchlight Hand. I was playing as a little a bard who was a satyr, which I stole from the Theros book. I believe he was really. It's a really powerful race. It has like this jumping ability, and it has like magic resistance baked in. I just heard that it was like a social heavy, adventure, so I decided to play as a bard because I'd never played one before. I like playing casters, I like playing knowledgeable characters, because I don't know. I feel like I've read the monster manual so many times that it's like unfair of me to not at least have a justification in universe as to how I know these things. So that's why I have like a wizard costume that I wear sometimes, and I have like I just play a lot of wizards because otherwise it just or like a knowledge domain cleric, or I have to like come up with some justification as to why I know things. And in this case, I was a Witchlight Hand. I knew the actual carnival because I worked at it. There are two new races that were introduced, Fairy and Harangan. I ended up playing as a fairy when Nin, my satyr, died in combat. Uh, I quite like the pun in the name Harangon. Do you know what do you know what the pun is? Because I know you're not a native speaker.
I did not realize it was a pun.
So it's like here and gone,
Ah,
and also
okay.
har Hare is another word for rabbit. It's a hare. I think it's in Irish, but I might be mistaken. I've only ever heard people in the island of Ireland refer to them as hares, so maybe it's a breed of rabbit specific to Ireland. I'm not sure, but I know that there are like people who hunt hares and stuff, and yeah, and the Harangon is basically rabbit folk. So
Oh, yeah, yeah. I own a Harris. It's weird in England they don't really eat them that much, but in France, yeah, very common. But
okay,
yeah, the two races were really good. I played a Harangan since, and I really enjoyed just kind of this really cheeky, bouncy around character. He's got a few annoying skills.
yeah,
Fairies are kind of cool because everyone wants. I think it's a very in demand thing, I'm not sure how useful or how wise it could be outside of this campaign to have someone who can fly at level 1. I think in some dungeons it would just break things, but I think here it's really cool.
Yeah, it's definitely a problem for low levels. Like it was the famous one, the Arakokra, that like was like the most banned player race. Um, I don't know. They've introduced in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything that like they sort of made the races, or as they're now calling them, the species, being like a template that you just sort of like mask over, and you come up with little like perks that you choose from a list. And one of the the described ones in Tasha's is a like flying from level 1 custom race. So they are introducing it more, but my big problem with the fairy is I wanted to be this like little sort of like Tinkerbell type character. They are small. Why are they not tiny? They're the small size, which is the same size as halflings and gnomes. Make them tiny. Make them little things. But they're not. I don't know.
Yeah, it's I guess it is kind of cool that they're I like what they're doing with the change of how you make characters.
Mm.
But yeah, I think with flying, for some dungeons you really just you'd have to design the dungeon around that one character.
Mm.
Like I think like the Tomb of Annihilation, if one of us could fly, would have been there are whole floors that would just be trivial.
Mm. I suppose I can see that, yeah. But even then, like by that, you mean the Tomb of the Nine Gods, the final Tomb of Annihilation dungeon that you ran through. Like fly was a second level, third level spell. Like you would have access to that. So like,
Yeah,
just
so we're like
you were like
level
10th
12,
level.
I think.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
12th level. You're high level. Fly 5e. I think it's a second level spell, but it might be a third. Loading third level transmutation spell. So yeah, by level 5 you should have access to the flying spell. So realistically,
Yeah.
I think it's just a case of DMs not like designing their encounters around flying enemies, like including more ranged combatants, more spellcasters, more I don't know, like siege weapons if you want to get it high level. Like powerful abilities to knock people out of the sky is part of designing a good D&D module, I would say.
Yeah, and I actually think this campaign probably would work quite well as a fairly high level campaign, especially because it allows you to get good use out of non-combat spells and stuff and skills.
Mm.
So I think a lot of the great spells are really great, but are completely useless in combat. It's like things like Detect Thoughts or Zone of Truth.
Mm.
I think it's a campaign where it really pays off to be a good face and a good social character.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I IRL don't have the charisma to play a bard. I just sort of realized that a little bit in where I was like, I think I just we were having a discussion. We were having like an argument or an introduction to the first hag Bavlorna, and I was like, can maybe you do the talking and I'll come in and do the finishing phrase, just as because I had a higher role, but this other player just could like speak better than me. And that like the module rewards roleplay so much that I just felt like I as a player was personally lacking, that I wasn't like able to keep up, sort of thing.
Yeah, I feel it's one of these things in role playing where obviously charisma, unlike other attributes, it's not just about the character. It's also, you're never going to be more charismatic than the player,
Mm.
and it kind of all makes it weird because like when you offer roles to a charisma character, it's always hard to figure out like, do we make them actually role play every role, like every persuasion? Do you have to role play it? And is that unfair if someone just wants to be the face? And
I don't even think
but
it's.
yeah, I think
I don't think it's just for charisma. Like, if your character is like an investigator or like really good at perception, really good at investigation, and you're making your way through the dungeon, like you could, as a beginner player, say my character searches the dungeon floor, right? But if you're an experienced player, you could like walk through. It's like, I'm topping it with a 10-foot pole. I'm like draining sand. I'm rolling marbles to see if anything triggers. I'm using the corner of my knife to scrape along the edge of the doorway to see if there's like a tripwire. There's a lot of things that you as an experienced player could describe your character doing, but if your character is good at these things, it's sort of implied that they're doing that. But I think most DMs don't allow for that. They would just say, well, you didn't say you were searching this thing. You weren't searching the bed. You were searching the room. You didn't specify you were looking under the pillow. You just said you were looking at the bed. That sort of way where they're intentionally obscuring information from the players that the character would have done. And there's a bit of a disconnect between what the player describes and what the character would have done.
Yeah, definitely.
We should probably get back to
But yeah,
the actual module.
yeah.
The reason why we came here to discuss this. So the Witchlight Carnival is ran by two Shatterkai, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I believe they are both.
Which are like they're like elves, but from the Shadow Realm. The Shadow, what's it called? The Feywild, not the Feywild, the other one, the Shadowfell.
I think it's Shadowfell.
Yeah, I had it right the first time. Shadowfell. And I was reading through the module. I haven't touched it in the. Obviously, I never looked at it when I was playing through it, but I read through bits of it in preparation for this. There's a really funny justification for why this like Feywild carnival was run by two creatures from the Shadowfell. Do you want to maybe cover that, or will I?
If I remember it correctly, they ran the carnival that you see in Ravenloft, and at some point they switched it. They traded it momentarily for this carnival, and they're always quite paranoid of the original owners coming back and swapping back.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, they were originally the carnival owners of a Shadowfell carnival, and they were just so happened to get parked up beside the Feywild carnival, and they just swapped them. And as you said, they just don't want to swap back because this one's so much better.
Yeah, they're really interesting characters, Mr. Witch and Mr. Light. And yeah, actually, one of the things that I was thinking of doing and almost happened, you guys didn't go for it in the end. So one of the things that I've never bothered with as a DM was characters having to eat or manage their food, that kind of stuff. But at one point, you guys, so one of the ways that the players are supposed to kind of get one over Mr. Witch and Mr. Light and influence them is by stealing Mr. Witch's watch. And this watch he uses to pack up the carnival. It kind of magically wraps the whole thing up, and they use it to move on. And at one point, you guys stolen the watch, and it looked like you were just going to try and keep it instead of giving it back to him. And so you actually get information about this watch. And so I think you get like a few spells that you can cast with that spell slot. So I think that's super strong. And you become fat like Mr. Witch does. But the thing that was really interesting, I thought I could maybe bring this in and make this an interesting handicap, is it says, I've actually got it up here. The creature attuned to the watch must eat and drink 8 times the normal amount each day. So that could be a really fun thing to force the players to have to deal with in the Feywild. Of just having this one single ravenous character.
That's pretty weird. Yeah, I did read through that. I'll be honest, I was on holiday over the weekend, so I didn't get that much time to prep, as you know. But yeah, I just the Witchlight Carnival, it did have that weird sort of like transition between the material world or wherever you happen to start the adventure to the Feywild, and I think it does the module does sort of assume that you do take the watch, which I think is strange because it seems like such a specific thing.
Yeah, it's again, I'm not sure if I ran the carnival particularly well. I think we spent a lot longer there than we should have. But yeah, I do like the way that it starts really marvelous and it just gets progressively darker and darker as you see a lot of messed up things around. I think the carnival. I'm kind of thinking of the fair, the campaign we played recently, which is very similar to the carnival, but it occurs mid-campaign and it's kind of a nice break from all the kind of more fighty stuff, and all of a sudden you're at a carnival. Well, here it starts lovely and it almost feels like a rest that you've not deserved yet. But yeah, there's lots of really cool games. There's kids running around everywhere. There's lots of events. Some of them some of them, and I think this is probably true for the whole campaign, would have been very tricky to run without maps. So I got a bunch of maps online for all the little random encounters here. I believe in the campaign there's like
that is a problem.
3 maps maybe.
That is a problem with some Wizards modules, is that they just describe, combats or encounters, and they don't provide a map for it. Like, you'd think with a company as big as Hasbro, they would and a product as good selling as D&D, you would think that they would have the budget to just make maps. And the proof of that is that there's like third-party creators that just create the maps that they didn't for the module, like you said, that you just pulled up.
Yeah, and these third-party creators, and they produce them within weeks of the module coming out. So, and I felt they were very good quality as well. I mean, I've used them for a bunch of other games since. But yeah, it is weird that they don't include them. What they do include, which I think is fantastic throughout the module, and I think just something that Wizards are great at in general, is the artwork.
I just got my copy of the new Player's Handbook like 2 days ago, and I've been like reading through it, and the art is incredible.
Yeah, it is something that I just consistently could not praise them enough for. But yeah, basically the players go around this carnival and you get various clues at different points. Some of them you missed, some of them you didn't. I think you did every single possible location.
Yeah. Well, we had a map, so we just went, okay, let's make our way clockwise around this. And we like explored everything.
Yeah, and kind of everything you do in the carnival somehow reflects on you later on, in some way or another in the campaign. Which,
there is a lot of English teacher style foreshadowing in this module.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Like every inconsequential thing that you do or that you come across, it will matter later on in the campaign. Every little person you meet, every little encounter, there is a reason, and you should pay attention at every point during the campaign because it will matter.
Yeah, and I think in quite a fun way, because it's never overpowered. Like you're never struggling later on if you don't do the right thing in the carnival, but it will change how some characters engage with you later on.
One thing I did want to bring up about the carnival was something that I heard you complain about to us as players. Was it the mystery mine, the one that gives you exhaustion?
Oh yeah. There is this one place where I think you're on a roller coaster, and I think it's literally just a case of rolling some sort of check. And let me find it, but yeah, if you get like 2 or 3 of these wrong, you get really, really severe penalties. Like you can like almost lose half your party just.
Yeah, if I remember right, there was like exhaustion levels, and there was like chances that long rests wouldn't even heal these exhaustion levels, and there were like permanent debuffs from some of the rides, which like I understand flavorfully why they would do that, because they did want the rides to have lasting effects, but like the punishments were very severe for an otherwise like sort of lighthearted and sort of whimsical campaign. It seemed like it was just very old school in its design. It's like pretty much save or die for some of those.
Okay, yeah, so I found the thing. So it's DC 12 wisdom saving throws, and it says any character who fails 3 or more is haunted by nightmares for 1d8 days, so potentially 8 days of this, And until the nightmares end, you have to do a DC 12 Wisdom saving throw after every rest, or you gain 1d3 levels of exhaustion.
Yeah.
So that's potentially
Lethal.
21 levels of exhaustion
Yeah.
if you're unlucky.
6, you're dead.
Which, yeah. So yeah, I was like reading online throughout Reddits and stuff, and yeah, pretty much everyone just did not run that as written because it would just have been brutal. I think a few of them did. A few of you did fail, and I kind of just had you guys have bad nightmares, but not in a way that, you know, really damaged you, and definitely not D3 levels of exhaustion.
There was my favorite encounter in the Witchlight Carnival was the snail racing.
Yeah.
It's partially because I won it, but yeah, I had a giant snail that I ran, and I bet like a gold piece that I would win, and I ended up winning like 2 gold pieces, and I was like, yes, I'm so set up for this campaign with all these gold pieces.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's, I guess, the other thing that we probably should say: in the Feywild, no one wants money.
Yeah. Which I didn't know. So I was like, all right, I guess I have all this money spare, and then we get to the Feywild, and it's all about like owing people, and it's all about like favors and bartering. Like, here's 2 muffins for a cupcake, or, you know, here's a jug of milk for this like pendant.
Yeah, I really like that because so first, I don't generally enjoy managing money in campaigns. I think a lot of the most campaigns I've done with at some point just forgotten about cash, because I just at some point it just doesn't really matter. But then when you have to, like, if you want something, you have to think of a memory to give up, for example, and that forces you to kind of create a bit more of your own backstory. And even though you're not losing anything as a character mechanically, it genuinely feels like you're giving something up. So yeah, I really enjoyed that side of it.
This wasn't in the Feywild, and this wasn't in the Wild Beyond the Witchlight, but do you remember the encounter where I convinced Paula's bard to give up their ability to play musical instruments?
Yes.
So this was in the Wrath of the River King, which, if you're playing Wild Beyond the Witchlight, I'm sure you'd be interested in at least reading Wrath of the River King. I got it for free online, not illegally. I got it legally through the Kobold Press website. It was just free one day when I checked it, and I was like, yes, please. But I convinced the bard to give up their ability to use instruments for some other thing that they wanted. And I explained this to one of my friends who's also a DM, and she said, that is the most devilish thing that I've done as a DM. And in retrospect, it was probably a mistake. And then we sort of came to this like conclusion that, oh, singing isn't a musical instrument, so you can still sing. So you can, the catch, if you haven't caught on yet, is you need verbal components to cast spells. And for a bard, it is music that creates the spells. So in this case, it was singing was the exception that we made. But yeah, you can make some very dastardly deals with the Fae, and they want very strange things and very personal things from you.
Yeah, I think it sounds much harsher to people who don't know Paula. But well, you had it coming. But but yeah, I like this idea that you trade in things that just matter to you or matter to your characters.
One thing that never came up in that campaign was that I convinced one of you to give a character your thanks, which I was going to hold. I had like written it down in the book. This person cannot say thank you because they have given their thanks. Which is like a trick that I had read online, and I was like, I'm definitely going to run that the next time I run a Feywild campaign. And I convinced a character, I think it was Keelan, to give up their thanks to get. I think it was the character says, "What can I give you?" And he says, "I only require your thanks." And obviously, the trick of the wording there is that you're no longer able to say thank you.
Yeah, I really like that side of things. Mostly because I think it brings transactions into a game where they often don't work super well. Like, even when you do end up with loads and loads of gold, very rarely do characters think of spending it.
Yeah, the gold sort of becomes just like hard to keep track of at a certain point. Like if you're like a level 17 adventure, if you're defeating level 7 CR17 monsters, you're getting hundreds of thousands of gold pieces. Like what are you supposed to spend those on? Like are you going to buy a city? Are you going to like create an armada? Are you going to create like a interstellar sort of spelljammer based like armada or like fleet of ships? Are you going to create a giant forge world? Like, are you going to buy the most exotic magic items that have ever been heard of? Are you going to collect? Are you going to start your own cult? Are you going to create your own music school? Like, it's the questions that are asked by that much wealth aren't answered in the Dungeon Master's Guide. And at a certain point, magic and well, money just becomes another number. It's just a number on a sheet. Like it's once you have enough to, to feed yourself and to get good armor and maybe a magic weapon, money just sort of doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah, and even the things that you might want to spend money on, when you're that strong, someone's got Hero's Feast, someone can forge armor for you. But I guess it's kind of the general problem of D&D as a high-level game. Obviously, I think much has been said about how the sweet spot for D&D is kind of level 1 through, I'd say, 12 maybe. I've never managed to successfully run a high-level campaign. Even when I did a one-shot a few weeks ago, I thought I'd made it too harsh, and you just bulldozed every encounter. I think that was only level 12.
Yeah, yeah. I played in a level 21 shot, and I ended up not even using. I created a sorcerer wardlock. It was like a sorelock build. It was completely just metagamed for like the most powerful creature. It was like, it was just the most damage that like you can do as a spellcaster, and it was like quicken spell and Eldritch Blast. So I was doing like 8 Eldritch Blasts per turn, and each of those did a D10 plus 5, and then I also had like it was just ridiculous. But I had this thing in the back of my back pocket, which is that I had the wish spell. Now I was considering just wishing that the dragon we were fighting would be teleported to the middle of the sun, but I was like, no, that's just gonna ruin the fun. We're here to fight a dragon and drink some beer. Let's like fight a dragon and drink some beer. But another exploit that I was aware of that I like didn't want to pull out because it was a new DM and it was a new group was the whole process of, I don't know if you've heard of this, where if you're a sorcerer, you cast Wish to cast Simulacrum. I think I've explained this to you before. You cast Wish to cast Simulacrum, and then you have your Simulacrum regain a 9th level spell slot by spending their sorcery points, and then you then have them cast Wish creating Simulacrum, and you can essentially create infinite clones of yourself.
Yeah, it does.
Like the kind of things you can do at high level D&D is so ridiculous. Or like there's this there's a type of druid that can refresh their hit points basically as a bonus action. So every turn, unless they take several hundred damage, they themselves are not damaged, and they can just refresh this like giant health pool of like a T-Rex or whatever it is. I think it's a moon druid that gets to do that at like high level. It's ridiculous. There's like no limit to the number of times they can wild shape, and they can wild shape as a bonus action. So they just refresh their hit points every time. We're getting a little bit off topic, I will admit, but it's still on D&D, so I think we're fine.
Yeah, I guess where I was going with this is that I'd be really interested to see how a high level campaign works in the Feywild, because I think it's got a lot of things that you can't just use your superpowers to deal with. Especially when you've got like these idea of these archfey, whose powers aren't really limited in any real sense. But yeah, the carnival I think is really, really nicely written, even though I don't think I ran it particularly well.
Can I ask you about Eliwick Tumblestrom?
She's the what's she called? The axe. Yeah, so my understanding is that she's like a wink to Magic the Gathering, which I've not played. But apparently she is, I think at some point they say she's the most powerful character ever mentioned in a book. You kind of have her there in case the party just kind of gets stuck. So actually, if you don't figure out the whole Hall of Mirrors way to get to the Feywild, or you don't manage to convince Mr. Witch and Mr. Light to let you go there, it just say eventually she'll just pop in and send you there on her own powers.
Yeah, because like I do play Magic the Gathering, and I saw that she had a card. I think it was just called Eliwick Tumblestrom, and she was what's called a planeswalker, which is like their like sort of like plane traveling sort of like super magic user. And I was like aware of who she was, so when I saw her there as just being this bard, I was sort of like keeping quiet, and I think I did allude to it. I was like, oh, I know something, DM, but I'm not going to act on my metagame knowledge. But yeah, I was really hoping that she would like return at some point in the campaign, or if there was like a more like narrative focused reason as to why she was included. But it seems it was just sort of like a nod that if you knew of her, then you would know of her.
Yeah, so I think her narrative purpose here is kind of like as a Deus Ex Machina for when the characters get stuck anywhere.
I see. Okay. So anywhere
yeah,
in the
I think
Feywild,
like,
she can reoccur. Is that what you're saying?
Pretty much, yeah. I think she's mainly intended at the carnival to get people moving on if they've failed to steal the watch or whatever. But yeah, I think she says like it says no stack block is necessary for her. She can't harm the characters. They can't harm her. But yeah, it was. I did notice that you had kind of a reaction to her, which was like, huh. And it was quite difficult because the campaign doesn't really give you anything. It just says she cryptically assures the characters that they are exactly where they're supposed to be and says no more. And yet I could really feel that the party wanted something out of her, and there's not really much there. She's just being very fucking aloof.
It's kind of like a Tom Bombadil, if that makes sense. Like arguably one of the most powerful creatures, and it's just there for fun and laughs.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, they do have this, because I guess the other big character, obviously major spoilers, is that the Archfey is in fact Natasha from Natasha's Cauldron and everything.
Yeah,
I think you guys pretty much guessed that from the first chapter. I think there's a statue of her or something, or
there was like a statue that cast Tasha's hideous laughter that sort of gave it away.
Yeah, and then like by the time we got to the final chapter and you get this big reveal, you were like, oh yeah, of course.
We're sort of jumping around. Maybe do you want to go to Heather?
Yeah.
So Heather. So there's three primary locations. So there's the plane is called, well, the area is called Prismere, and there are three main regions controlled by three of the Hourglass Coven hags. So there is Bavlorna, Endolin, and Skabatha, I believe, are the three hags. Does that sound right? And so the three different locations, Heather, Tither, and Yon, are sort of geographically unique in that there's like a marsh, a forest, and a mountain range. And they all once made up this land called Prismere, which was ran by it was Tasha, but I forget what the name that they used. Did they call her Tasha then? Or did they call her
Zyblina?
Zyblina. Yeah, they called her Zyblina. And it was once one big plane, but it is now divided up kind of like the Domains of Dread in the Ravenloft campaign. But they're just sort of like fog or mist that is obscuring the areas, such that you need a specific guide to get from one to the next. Am I sort of describing it fairly right?
Yeah. So yeah, there's kind of these three witches, these three hags who are Tasha's sisters, and they betray her, and they split her domain in three. And yes, the first one the characters come to is Hither, which I think is my favorite, because I think the hag there is the best. Because because she's just disgusting. She's horrible to everyone. She's kind of toad-like, and I just really like the location. So especially the town. So each of these locations has a main place where the hag stays.
So I remember
And
the
yeah,
Soggy Court, but I don't remember what the actual name of the location is.
I think it might just be the Soggy Court.
Is it? Because I remember, I also agree that this location in or around Pavlorna was probably the best location. It was just there was just like lots of little like errands to run and like things to do, and it was the point in the campaign where there was the biggest power imbalance between the hag and us, if that makes sense, where
Yeah,
we sort of had to work with her or like try to solve it just through dialogue and through running errands rather than trying to fight our way through, because there was the biggest imbalance between us and her.
yeah, and I think that's something that I would change if I ran this again. I think by the time you got to the second hag and definitely the third hag, you were just like, we're just gonna kill them, and you did that very effectively. Which actually made the last chapter much easier. But yeah, with Hither, you kind of have this whole Babylon as the main character, the main figure in this town. But you've also got kind of this fake court where there's these bullywugs, these like toad creatures. One of them's a king, so it's kind of organized monarchy. But you quickly realize whoever gets to be king changes every week. They're constantly overthrowing each other. There's constantly plot, revolution. You can join them. You can try and put them down. That'll get you different things.
It was really fun because I think we were involved in two different coups.
Yeah,
Like one coup would have been interesting, but we were involved in two, which shows you how often they happen.
yeah, definitely. I definitely enjoyed this the most of all the campaigns, of all the sections. And yeah, just things you got really lucky with them. So one of the key objects in the campaign is this unicorn's horn, which you roll for at the start of the campaign. And yeah, there's these two traders, and they just happen to have it. So you guys got that really easily.
Really early.
Yeah. But you did all the other things really well. So at one point you save this dragon knight, Sir Tavalar, who's like a really fun character, and he comes back to help you in the final chapter. I think he leaves you his sword or something. And yeah, every section has little bits that have consequences, and so for example, to find the guide to take you to the next place, you have to get a scarecrow his head back or something that'll serve as his head. And yeah, the whole domain kind of reacts to the characters.
Was that Capricorn?
One of the things that I forgot to do.
If I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's one of the things that I forgot to do was death functions a bit weirdly in the Feywild. And I remember I only think I rolled this for the first few encounters before forgetting about it. Is you roll a d8 and I think on an 8 the character just returns to life with the hit points. 1 2 through 6 maybe they just die as normal, and then a 7 I think it's like a gentle repose.
Okay.
And I did it originally because you start off on this massive bridge that's broken and you have to figure out how to get down, and Paola just jumped off. And with hindsight, I should have just let her die. This is just a classic fuck around find out thing. She jumped off a cliff, she should have died. But I was like, okay, she's just got to the Feywild, and there is actually a mechanism here. I'll roll the dice, and I fudged it to be an 8, so that she kind of came back to life. So then I thought, oh, she won't die, we'll have to make a new character, and we'll introduce this mechanism. But yeah, I think that was a mistake. I absolutely...
This podcast might be us talking about times we fucked over Paula, but do you remember the yellow flowers, the yellow leaf thing?
Yeah. So I think is that what she'd lost?
No,
She
no,
gave
this
up the
no. I think what she did is she traded her yellow leaves for the unicorn horn, if I remember correctly.
yes, and then subsequently, the only thing people wanted from her is a yellow flower.
Yeah, and then there was a big reveal in Yawn with that the actual not it wasn't Capriclaw, it was the that area's version of Capriclaw, which is eluding me. Um, but it was
Uh,
like was it Panella? No.
it's the flower, isn't it?
Yeah, it was the flower person who was basically just a giant yellow flower. And I wouldn't have believed it except that there is like official artwork done by wizards of this giant yellow flower. And this reveal was just so funny. Just seeing it rubbed in. And then Paula eventually got her yellow flowers back. And then she traded me her yellow flowers for something, if I remember right. It was like the ornithopter.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, it was in Yon, the Skabatha has this ornithopter, like like self flying machine, and we had this funny, I think, language barrier breakdown where Paula's character said, "I'm going after the broom," and I said, "Great, I'm going after the ornithopter," and I got the ornithopter and I traded Paula the ornithopter for her yellow flowers, and then she didn't have them the rest of the campaign. So there was like a solid 2 sessions where she had her yellow
Mm.
flowers back. But yeah,
But yeah, so I think in Hither you guys kind of solved a bunch of quests, and then yeah, I think you just outright managed to kill Bavlorna in the end. Um,
so
and
the
then
way I remember it is that we made it to the end of Yawn, and then before going to the Palace of Heart's Desires, we retrospectively went back to Hither, Tither, and Yawn and killed the hags after we had leveled up sufficiently.
maybe yeah, because I just remember like when we got to the final chapter. So the way you're supposed to run this is as long as the witches' bodies haven't been burnt and stuff, and there's one of them surviving, the surviving one will go and resurrect the other two, and they'll be there in the end. Um, but you guys were very meticulous about destroying the bodies, so I kind of had to put in some additional baddies instead. Um, but yeah, I think it's a nice little setting for the first one, especially because in this one you don't really get to the town for about, I'd say, half the time that you are in Hither.
Yeah, there were quite a few encounters. There was like the, as you said, the one with the fairy dragon where he was like hanging up in this like bird cage almost.
Hmm.
And there was the one with the, it was like a jingle jangle, I want to say.
Yeah, this little guy who's obsessed with keys.
Yeah,
Um, I kind of realized that not all, but a lot of the characters here have been, messed with by the hags in some way or another. Um, so like it's very easy for the characters to find sympathetic supporters around there. A lot of them really want the return of Zelina, and for most of the campaign, you are led to believe that Zelina was sort of this benevolent ruler that's been overthrown. There's always a few hints that maybe this isn't quite the case.
mm.
But yeah, I think there's this moving hotel as well, which is really cool with like the arms.
I actually kept track of like I started keeping track and I stopped. We were told that there were like these rules to the Feywild, and one of them was that everything there was like a rule of reciprocity where every time someone does something nice for you, you have to like give something back to them eventually. And at one point, I was keeping track of everything that I was given. And I was trying to like make sure that I at the end went back and gave back something back. And I think that person, the moving inn that we like stayed in, we didn't pay obviously because they don't accept money. I like had it written down, gave something back to them, and it was one of the few things that I was like, oh, I wish I went back and actually done that, because throughout most of the campaign we did try and keep up with reciprocity, even if things weren't like quite equal. Like we were given like a magic item and we gave them back like a muffin. At least we gave them something, that sort of way. But yeah, I thought that because I'd realized that every action has consequences, I thought if we didn't keep up with the reciprocity, something bad was going to happen. But then we got to the end of the campaign, and I was like, oh, I guess that wasn't a factor.
Yeah. And what I like about Hither is that it's very open as how you get to play it, which I think isn't really the case in Tither and Hon. So Tither is kind of much more the classic Feywild. It's just like it's a big, sprawling forest, with like an evil at the heart of it, rotting throughout the forest, and that's the hag. And there's kind of like there's already when you get there, there's obvious goodies and baddies. Like these bunch of kids who are. There's this one kid who's kind of
Will of the
their
Feywild.
leader. Yes. And yeah, I don't know how you guys. So one of the twists with Will of the Feywild is that he's actually a horrible creature who was, I believe, cursed to be good. And I think at some point you guys must have acquired some sort of seeing ability.
Yeah, if I remember right, there was some kind of event happened where we let someone go through a portal back to the material realm, and in recompense we were given, one of our characters was given true sight for like a day. Does that sound right?
Yeah. I guess we've not really mentioned that. Yeah, at every point in every part of Prismia, there are different ways you can get back to the material plane, and they put a lot of importance on this, which is kind of weird because you don't want the characters to go back. That's like the end of the campaign. But yeah, you can in theory exit at any point. Yeah, there's all these posters for this wanted guy, Will of the Feywild. You guys, I think, very, very almost killed him when you realized he wasn't what he looked like.
Yeah.
Which was quite tricky because he is genuinely good at this point.
If I remember right, he was like an Oni.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, I've ran Onis before as like, well, basically what the opposite of what Will of the Feywild was, which was like a subservient of a hag, of a powerful hag coven. I was running, like, it was my first ever homebrew campaign, first ever campaign I ran. I ran for like 3 different groups and no one paid attention to the primary plot. It was kind of weird. Maybe it was just my writing, but I had this entire like plot line where children were being kidnapped by an Oni, and I really like the Oni. It's a fun character, but it is interesting that there's this sort of like twist where, as you said, it was like cursed to be good, and we had this. I assumed that the reason why we were given True Sight was to find out that Will of the Feywild was an Oni. Like, is there anything in the book other than that True Sight that allows you to figure it out? Because I only know the way that we figured out. Or is it meant to be like?
Sure.
Is it meant to be hidden, or is it like? You don't know.
I can't remember exactly. But yeah, essentially, you guys have eventually make friends with these little resistant fighters. You realize the hag that you're after has kind of set up a toy factory, where all these kidnapped children are being forced to work. And then it's kind of very straightforward. You kind of just go there, save the kids, and if you can, kill the hag. Which again, I can't remember if you did or not, or if you just went back and did it.
We visited a few times. It was Loom Lurch, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
I think you
it was like a giant, like, hollowed out tree, and we visited like 3 times. It was quite a few times. We like came and went.
Yeah, because I guess it's kind of the closest thing you kind of get to a dungeon really in this campaign is these hags' residents.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't enjoy this as much as the other 2. I think just because it felt very railroady compared to the other ones, which were much more open.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, it felt a little bit.
yeah, a lot
It
more.
felt more railroaded, but also felt more coherent. It felt like it was like actually telling like a self-contained story rather than just being weird whimsy. If that makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah, and I think it's just where you get all the lore about the unicorns, and I think this is where you first properly learn about Zyblina, and because you meet the unicorns and they give you most of the lore.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that's where you find out that um, I think that's where you find out that's sort of your overarching objective of freeing Zyblina.
It sort of hinges on the unicorn horn.
Yeah, it's also where you meet the League of Malevolence, who are supposed to be kind of secondary baddies, but I don't think they're really. You only meet one of them in Tither, and then you meet one more of them in Yon, and the rest of them are in the final palace,
Mm-hmm.
but are quite avoidable.
Yeah, it's something that I've noticed that Wizards has been doing more often is like making it so that you're not the only adventuring party out there.
Mm.
If I remember correctly, the Matthew Mercer's book, not I'll have to like Google it. Do you remember the name of the book, Matthew Mercer's book? With it was like a campaign level 3 onwards for set in
The
his world.
Wildemont one,
It was
the
set in
Wildemount.
Wildmount. It was set in Wildmount, but you okay, Hilda? Sorry, my dog is. Oh, did you just throw up? You did just throw up. Okay. Well, anyway. Uh, Wildmount book. It wasn't. It was Call of the Netherdeep. That was the one. I have it somewhere. I think I have it at my granddad's house. I was reading it and I was thinking about running it. But that also features prominently a adventuring party adversarial to yours. And I don't know. I just think it's a nice twist. It's a nice
Yeah,
change that you're not like so unique that other people have explored or at least tried to go to the dungeons that you've been at before, or at least like it's a lot easier if they are an actual adversary to you rather than just also being good aligned. But if I remember correctly, I'm looking at the contents page now. There was also the Valor's Call people, which were the good aligned adventuring party that you could meet.
yeah. I think you free the first one in Tither. He's in the factory.
Yeah.
One of the things that I really like actually is in every part you kind of do bits and bobs to get you a meeting with the hag, and all these hags really hate each other. So often they will give you the thing that you want from them. So this is usually one of the things that the characters have lost, which is kind of like the original plot hook. But it's always things so like Skabatha, she wants you to capture Will. She wants you to betray all the kids. Or she wants you to find the horn. And then the one that you guys ended up going with is she wants you to sabotage one of her sister's plays. So the third hag lives in this massive castle in this mountain, and she has this massive sort of theatre production thing where she kind of tortures actors and makes them do horrible plays. And you kind of have to go there, get a meeting with her, and then sabotage it. And I really like that the main baddies all hate each other and are always trying to hate each other. And a lot of the time, you're almost working for them. And yeah, I think I really liked I'd say, yeah, Yon, which is the final one.
Yeah.
Probably my least favorite of the three. It felt a bit more. First, it felt a bit more scarce than the other two. And I guess also at this point, people have been doing like Feywild shenanigans for a while now. It doesn't feel as kind of novel anymore.
Yeah.
And I think in a few instances you're just like, let's just stab these guys, let's just fight them, just for something different at that point.
Yeah, 'cause, I don't know. It just felt like there were some times where like we rolled initiative, they were attacking us, and we were like, we could try and talk them down, but it's been like 10
Yeah.
sessions since I've had a combat. Let's just kill them. Like I remember, they weren't flame skulls, but we were in this like crevasse, this like bridge over a crevasse, and there were these flying creatures or maybe not flying, maybe I don't know, but they were attacking us, and we just rolled initiative. They were attacking us, and we were like, all right, I guess we'll fight. And afterwards, you sort of like give us little like thing, like sort of jab, and like if you just asked them to pass, you would have been fine. But like it was just some combat because it's D&D, and you want to have a bit of fun, you know?
Yeah, yeah, and I think like once you've done like, well, at this point you've had 4 big locations with no compulsory combat. People just want to fight stuff, and I think that's probably one of the bad things of that campaign is, even though they do build this as kind of a very role play heavy thing, players have like built their characters with like fighting spells, and most abilities are about harming other people. And at some point you want to use those skills. The one thing that I did like about Yon is the play. So one of the things that the players can do is they actually get a meeting with the hag, and they convince her that they will do things for her. And one of the ways that you get your meeting with her is to put on a play. So the characters have to make up a play, basically. And it was terrible, but in a really funny way.
So I was having
And I can't
internet
remember
issues
how-
that night, if I remember correctly, so I actually basically missed this entire thing.
Possibly, let me get the rules up for this.
Yeah. I live in the middle of nowhere where I have terrible internet. Like even right now, I was trying to use my Wi-Fi, but it wasn't working. So I'm currently using my phone's mobile data to speak to you. That's...
But yeah, so basically you roll a d8 and your characters all get given new roles to play. And then sort of every time you guys give a good line, you get positively rated, and every time you do something bad, you get negatively rated. And then you essentially, the way that the campaign goes from there on depends on how well or how badly you do the play. But you also have this secret mission from the previous hag that you want to absolutely ruin one of the plays and ruin her day because they hate each other. And yeah, so your play turned out terrible, and to this day I'm not sure if it was intentional or not. But yeah, I do like having like characters make a story within a story. I thought that was really fun.
Yeah, maybe we should mention the weaknesses of the hags, because we've made it this far. We may as well.
Yeah, you do know the weaknesses.
So this was something that we apparently were told, but none of us remember. And I remember you like scratching your head, being like, "There was this point where I should have told them, but we had just like not taken advantage of these like weaknesses of the hags, and had to like told them quite late in the campaign." But we didn't know these things, if I remember correctly.
I'm not sure if I just fully forgot them or. So you definitely knew Bavlorna because that's how you killed her.
No, we figured when we killed Bavlorna not at low level. We killed her after we had like basically finished Yawn. We went back and killed all the hags, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I guess it was probably mentioned. Yeah, at one point you have a chance to commandeer. You actually get 2 chances to commandeer airships. So one's like a really crappy hot air balloon filled with swamp gas, and the other one, which I think you took, was a massive storm kind of powered ship. Which you guys, I think, is it when you got the unicorn horn off them, they realized their mistake and then you use it to blackmail them.
Yeah, because they were like working for one of the hags, I want to say, who wanted the unicorn horn, and we were like threatening to reveal that they had given up the unicorn horn for like some whatever cost it was.
It might even mean the color yellow.
Yeah, it was the yellow leaves of the yellow flowers.
But yeah, so they've all got these weaknesses. So I think for the last one, she can only die during an eclipse. And this kind of gets hinted at a lot, but never really said explicitly, and it's never said how you can make one happen. But yeah, I think eventually you guys, I can't remember how you guys made an eclipse in the end.
So if I remember, we had we had like 2 fights with her, I want to say, and one of them was in this like, is solarium the right word? Is it? It was like a big it was like a big room with like a sun and a moon on like mechanics that like moved around.
Oh yeah, I think it was just the theater. Yeah, were they theater props?
There was like, I don't think it was in the theater. I think it was upstairs somewhere. But we were in this like room with like these like planets and a sun, and it was they were all like moving mechanisms, and we created an eclipse between the sun and the moon, like using this mechanism. And then she like ran away somewhere up to like a bigger room, and then we made a different eclipse using the 2 twins. There was like a moon twin and a sun twin, and then like that worked somehow and killed her, I think, if I'm remembering correctly.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then I guess the last place is the Palace of Heart's Desire.
Yeah.
Which again is, I think, very classic Feywild. It's just a massive enchanted palace. At this point, you kind of, I think you're supposed to at this point have figured out that Zyblina is really Natasha. So you kind of know that she's not as nice as she pretends to be, and if you don't know, the insides of the palace kind of make that very clear. Again, like at this point, all the little bits and bobs that you've done throughout the campaign kind of come to roost, and you get help and stuff. And I think you guys were so thorough with the previous parts of the campaign that actually this went really, really quickly.
Yeah.
Like I think we might have spent 2 sessions here, maybe.
Yeah, for such a big dungeon, we did sort of fly through it because we had a lot of help. And the thing that I remember, one of the things I remember most clearly was there 2 things. The one we covered already, which was the oil that fought the Jabberwock. But then the other one was we came across this like ogre or like giant creature, and we like gave it like the letter from the Cyclops that he was looking for love. Do you remember this?
Oh yeah. The beekeeper guy.
And we came across
you
this.
guys got really lucky because I think you guys actually. So it's in Tither.
Yeah.
And there's this guy who's like this massive Cyclops beekeeper, and he's horrible and he attacks you. And eventually you realize that he just wants love, and so you convince him to stop attacking you if you help him with his love life. And he describes this vision he's seen of this giant. And like I think like most parties wouldn't have done that. Mostly because he is at that point a character that you can kill quite easily. Then yeah, you do get to the palace, and you have this most horrible giant who's there just like eating children and just being awful. And you guys actually have the letter, and yeah, I think she just reads the letter and jumps out the window. And
I just remember you being shocked that we remembered it. It's like you were like, this wasn't supposed to happen.
Yeah, so I think the main premise of the Palace of Heart's Desire is that it's frozen in time. so the inside of the palace, and you see a few characters outside who are kind of waiting to see Zyblina, who obviously is out of commission. I think they're mostly there to kind of, you interact with them and you should be able to fill in any blanks of things that you don't know by now. And then it's just a case of figuring out how to get in, which I think you guys had an issue with because there's these two guardian creatures who you can reason with to let you in. And one of them you guys just insisted on killing. I think the lion, maybe.
Yeah, that's ringing true. I think we did kill one of them, and then that left us without a lot of information because we were supposed to talk to them.
Yeah, but then I think the thing that I probably should have changed it a bit was by the time you guys got in, a lot of the things that you needed to win, you had. So the unicorn's horn, you've had that for ages. The fact that Zyblina's true name is Tasha, you had that. And so actually once you got there, you managed to pretty much wrap up the campaign without any major fights.
Yeah, if I remember, we had like less than a dozen fights through this entire campaign, which is weird.
Yeah, and I don't think I would run it that way again. I think I would just have some of the characters be outright hostile. So you don't have to have a fight every session, but you want to have one at least every other session, just because as I said, it's a fighting game at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's lots of really charming characters, I think, around the palace. So all butlers, and you also kind of realize in a bittersweet way that what you're trying to achieve as characters isn't even necessarily that good. So as bad as the hags are, you realize that Zyblina is kind of almost evil on a different level. She's I guess she's one of the big famous antagonists of D&D. And you realize that she's the hags, but she's able to pretend that she's not, and she's a lot worse. But she treats Prismia as kind of her escape from all the bad things that she's done. So that kind of allows the characters to not feel too bad about themselves for setting her free.
Okay. So kind of bittersweet.
Yeah. And I think she grants everyone a wish at the end.
I just wish for my old character to be back alive. I don't remember what everyone else wished for, but I remember that's what I wanted.
Yeah, because I think I got the impression that you deliberately let your first character die.
So the whole thing with that character was that we were fighting against these red caps, and they had these really powerful attacks, and I just got downed, and I was rolling death saves, and I rolled a nat 1 on my death save, so I had 2 failures. And I could tell you were like trying to fudge the dice, trying to get rid of these guys, but it wasn't that I wanted him to die, it's that I didn't want him to be saved without just reasoning. I didn't want it to be like a fudged thing. I wanted my character to live because he deserved to live, and I just failed my death saves, and I was like, I'm fine with that. Because that's just the kind of person I am, that I don't want... I mean, as a player, I do want the dice to be fudged to make the game more fun, but if I can tell that the dice are being fudged, that's when I take issue with it. And I could tell you were trying to make it so my character would live because you just wanted my character to live, and I was like, nah, let them die.
Because I got the impression that, I think at one point the combat was over, and the others could have stabilized you, but you were like...
No, I think I had died at that point.
Possibly, yeah. But yeah, I think it's not what I expected in a campaign.
It was definitely a life lesson, I would say. It It was something that I would recommend everyone play or run at some point because it is very unique. It sort of stands alone, and it teaches you a lot of things about game design. It felt more like a video game than most D&D modules, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I can see some parties hating it.
Yeah, yeah. It's like if you would enjoy a pacifist run on Undertale, you would enjoy this. I don't know if you've played that
Yeah.
game.
Yeah, I think you could probably have a lot of fun just kind of going through this campaign as psychopaths as well. Just
Just killing everything.
yeah, that could be interesting. But I think because of the way that the rules work in the Feywild, you could actually punish that in really fun ways.
Mm.
But yeah, it's I think it's probably wasn't the best campaign to run in the circumstances. So the context was it was still very much heavy lockdown.
Yeah.
Um, I think we just finished. Have we just finished Curse of Strahd, or have we done another one since then? We done. I think we just done Tomb of Annihilation as well.
Yeah, we did. We did the last dungeon from Tomb Annihilation as like an addendum to Curse of Strahd. It was meant to be like a continuation, but then everyone showed up with different characters, and I was like, all right, whatever. So yeah, but I don't know. Lockdown was great and terrible. But it was great for D&D because I was playing D&D like four or five times a week. It was great. Everyone was free. Everyone was down.
Yeah, but yeah, I think that this would. I'd be very interested in running this campaign in person. Because I think it does give you so much more space for acting and role playing, which doesn't just seem like you're just adding color. It's actually mechanically what you should be doing.
Yeah. Roleplay is a lot better in person, is my only complaint about online stuff. Online is a lot better for maps specifically. Like there's one module that I ran, which is Dungeon of the Mad Mage, Waterdeep Dungeon of the Mad Mage, which is this like mega dungeon. Mega dungeons are so difficult to run using like pen and paper. Like I have a giant like dry erase mat that I use for dungeons and stuff. It's fine for like, one floor of a dungeon. You can probably fit it on this giant dry erase map. But a mega dungeon is just so difficult to run. And it's so handy to just have a if I were to run Dungeons of the Mad Mage for people in person, I would get them to bring their laptops just to use that for the map. Like we can roleplay in real life, but we need that, or I would do some kind of like sort of go between, some sort of intermediate by like having, in an ideal world I would love to have a dungeon table which has like the big screen in it in the middle of it. Or I had a friend who ran a campaign for where he had a TV that he put up the map behind us and we just described where we wanted to go. Something like that could work, but yeah.
Yeah, something I've always wanted is just eventually to afford to have a place where I could have a spare room for D&D.
Yeah, yeah.
I've got access to a large format printer, to a laser cutter, to a bunch of 3D printers. I could make so much stuff, but right now I just don't have an actual house where it's worth keeping it in.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I think just 3D printing and large format printing for maps could be really fun. So like, there's one campaign that I've got that I've been wanting to run for ages, is based in an airship. And you can just get some 3D models for airships, which are just fantastic. And they cost you like £2. And they cost maybe like £20 of resin to print the whole thing. But yeah, no maps.
Is it the murder mystery one you were talking about?
No, that's based on a train.
Okay.
Which I still want to run, but again, I'm just not sure if it'll work online too well.
Yeah.
Cause I think it needs to be one session really, but it'd have to be a really long session.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that would be a really, again, very role play focused campaign. But my worry with that kind of thing is just what happens if the characters just don't figure it out. And then, like, what do you do? Do you just, so like in the Feywild, in the carnival, I don't think it would have felt very satisfying if you guys just kind of got the the character to just let you in.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a very interesting campaign, and I would definitely do another Feywild campaign in the future. Maybe this one, but I think probably in person, because I really like the roleplay aspect of it.
Yeah. Anything you want to close with?
I'm trying to think if there's anything big that we've not really covered. Scrolling through the book here. Oh yeah, so you do get one thing that I've not seen in other campaigns is that you get a bunch of role-playing cards, which I thought were really fun. And they just kind of give you a bunch of prompts and personality traits and ideals for all the main characters that you run into. And I think you get like a few dozen of these. And it's kind of fun to see which characters become just like a 5-minute encounter and which become almost like party mascots.
Mm-hmm.
Flower eventually.
That little like mushroom guy that we like kept along.
Oh yeah, the little mushroom guy. I forgot about him. Yeah, there's like a bunch of foraging rules, and like there's a bunch of rules that go with just being in the Feywild. And I think if I do write my own campaign, I'd be willing to having like these little sort of local rules. So, like one thing's that you can roll a d8 and forage, and you can get all these kind of wacky things you can find. And I like the idea of kind of being in an environment that has very specific rules, which are actually very generous to the players if they want to engage with them.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think we've covered most of what goes on. Obviously, there's loads we've skipped over. I think all these little individual places are very detailed. I think for every section, you get a list of random encounters that happen. I think in every case, I ran all of them pretty much, which maybe was too much. I think it just ended up slowing down the campaign quite a bit.
It felt like every time we went to go somewhere, we were interrupted, which I think was like by design, but still it was like, it just made it a pain to get anywhere.
Yeah, I think it was, part of it was just that I wanted you guys to have some fights, or to have things that weren't just the main plot. I think that was kind of the main rationale. And then some of them just end up taking up a lot of time. So like Mudlump, the Cyclops, which is the Cyclops who falls in love, shouldn't have been a big encounter, but it became like really quite a big thing. And I think I quite like that kind of little surprise. But yeah, I probably should have ran maybe half the random encounters. But also I'd set up the maps as well, and I think I just didn't want to lose the fact that I'd set up the maps. Which I'm not fast at all.
With that, thank you, Nathan, for coming on Onions and Flagons.
It was a pleasure.
Sorry?
Yeah, it was a pleasure.
And we will see you in a fortnight's time for the next episode. Not you, but the listener. I'll see you. Thank you for listening. Bye.